I got new goggles, my dudes.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Connor Smith. I'm with the band called The Eyes Have It. And by band, I mean just me, because at the moment it's a solo project. I'm just doing everything out of my bedroom. But yeah, I'm planning on releasing an album by around April of this year. We'll see how many songs I can get cranked out. I have a few so far. Unfortunately, I can't do music production all day. I have to go to work and do adult things too. But yeah, like I said, around April of this year is when I'm planning on releasing an album. For this video, I just want to talk about how to get a good bass tone, or at least what works for me. I've kind of gotten into recording fairly recently, but picked up a lot of good stuff on the way. And bass is pretty overlooked, I think, in modern metal music. I think a lot of people tend to just focus really on the guitars. And as a guitarist, I get that. That's my primary instrument, but the bass, it really plays a huge part in the overall sound. So this video is just going to be me sharing some kind of setup stuff and just some little tips here and there. But yeah, hopefully it helps. So obviously your bass tone is going to start with your bass guitar. I'm using an ESP LTD F104. It is one of the most inexpensive, if not, I believe, the most inexpensive bass guitars ESP makes. But it has a really great sound, plays really nice. It's a 35-inch scale, if I remember correctly, so it's good for drop tunings. I mostly play in drop C. The strings that came on it are kind of amps. It needs new strings, but that's pretty typical. But yeah, for the money, definitely one of the nicer bass guitars that I've played. I tested quite a few out in the sort of $300 to $500 range. It's definitely one of the better sounding and better playing ones for that kind of money. I didn't want to jump into a real expensive or kind of a mid-range bass, if you will, because bass isn't my primary instrument, and I've just recently started playing it, so I figured it'd be best to work my way up rather than start with something really nice and not really appreciate it. That's kind of my philosophy with any type of gear. And the next piece of gear I'm using is a Darkglass Alpha and Omega distortion pedal. I really like it. Most bass distortion pedals that I've seen tend to sound pretty flubby, pretty buzzy. It's not real clear, not real crisp, and not real tight. And for modern metal music, you want something that obviously has a lot of bass, but you also want it to be still tight and crisp. This pedal has a ton of different sounds that you can get from it. Really, really versatile. One thing I really like about it is it has two outputs. So it has the one output is obviously the signal processed by the distortion pedal, but this other output, which you see from the XLR cable there, is purely just the clean signal directly from the bass guitar. So it's untouched by the pedal in any way. And it's really nice because you can set an audio track to have two different outputs into one feed. So it uses two of your lines and combines it into one audio track. And so by having both outputs, your clean and then your distorted signal, you get a really nice blend of tones, because your clean signal is going to have a lot of bass, but obviously you want some distortion in there. So by having both, it just ends up with a really nice, well, tight and crisp sound. Just kind of the whole point. But highly recommend it. They're a little expensive. They're about $350 new. They run only on 9-volt power, so there's no option to run any kind of batteries. You have to use a plug. And like I said, they're a little pricey, but I found mine used for I think $240 on eBay, which is a pretty solid deal. So you can keep your eye out and maybe find a good deal like I did. They make a slightly less expensive model that's $250 new, but obviously it doesn't have the same amount of features. The next piece of gear, if you will, that I'm using is a Kazrog bass director. You can find them right here. I'll put links in the description for everything. But I tried quite a few different bass amp sims. The ones in Logic that come with Logic are pretty solid. They're good for clean tones. They're not the greatest for distortion tones, or at least I couldn't get a great sound out of them. They're definitely one of the better ones. I tried some of the Amplitude ones. They're okay. They're not my favorite. The thing with bass though is there's just not a ton of options that I've found. With guitar, you can find just about anything you want. There's tons of cab sims, amp sims, IR files. Just you can pretty much find whatever sound you're looking for. A lot of it's free. With bass, there wasn't as many options, and I don't have a bass amp, and I don't really want to try to mic amps in my room. There's just too many drawbacks to doing stuff like that, and with digital stuff these days, you can get as good of a sound, if not better, because miking amps requires a lot of patience and just knowledge, and not everyone has that type of time or background or experience. So digital plugins are definitely a good way to go. But anyways, this is the better ones that I've tried. I really like it so far. If you don't have a distortion pedal, this is a good option. It's a TSC Audio BOD Overdrive. This plugin's totally free. It doesn't require licenses or anything like that. This is a good one though if you don't have any type of distortion pedals. Plugins do well, like distortion plugins do well. But I prefer having an actual piece of equipment for that part of the signal chain. It's just easier for me to adjust, and I personally get a better sound out of using physical pedals rather than plugins. So I'll play something now because you guys are probably getting tired of listening to me ramble. So everything you're going to be hearing is there's no compression, there's no EQ, it's just raw audio. So the bass guitar is just the distortion pedal I talked about earlier, and then the Kazrog bass director. Actually, none of the tracks have any kind of processing of any kind. It's just raw audio. And then here's the track solo. So you may have noticed on its own the bass guitar actually doesn't sound all that great. It sounds kind of terrible in some ways. But when it's played with the rest of the instruments, I think it's a nice balance. Hopefully you like the sound, because obviously that's the whole focus of this video, other than some shameless promotion. Like I said, my album is supposed to come out around April of this year. But anyways, enough about that. So like I said, it's good balance. You still hear the kick drum. The bass guitar itself has a lot of bass still, but it's not washed. It doesn't wash anything out. If you have too much bass, you'll tend to just lose it in the mix, and you probably won't hear anything, or it'll just sound really flubby and wash out everything else. And then if you have too much mid-range, you're cutting into the guitar's kind of section of the mix. So you want to create a little bit of a pocket. And obviously a lot of that's going to be EQ and compression and those sorts of things. But it's important to start with a good tone itself. I mean, with plugins, fortunately, you can go back and make changes and switch plugins and do that kind of thing. Typically, the biggest thing you'll have to worry about doing that is just your gain staging. By changing between different effects, it affects the volume sometimes. But you can go back and make changes. But it's still, I like to try to find something that I'm going to stick with from the get-go. And if something sounds crappy later when you're doing EQ and mixing everything together, then yeah, obviously go back and change it. But usually spend a good amount of time before I even really start a song trying to find the right tones. And on that same note, make sure you give your mind and your ears a rest. If you've been at your kind of tone hunt for a few hours or so, lay something down real quick. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just get something recorded, take a little bit of a break, come back, and then listen to it again. You might find, okay, this actually does sound pretty good, or, the search continues. But it's definitely important to step away from it at times, because I've found myself just hunting through tones, switching, IR files on guitars, and just going through tons of different options. And you just kind of end up going in circles, and you're just wasting a lot of time that way. But you do want to start with something that you like. So like I said, everything's just a balance. It's kind of the whole overall message of a recording, period. If you're new to recording, the recordingrevolution.com is a great place to start. And then anytime you have a question, just stop what you're doing and search. Don't try to just spend hours searching around in your DAW for whatever you're trying to do, or just clicking things randomly. There's people have answered every question that I've had just about so far. But anyways, hopefully this helps. This is my first video, so it's probably a little rough. Any kind of suggestions for improvement that you have, appreciated. If you have criticism, hopefully it's constructed, but it's the internet, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of both. Someone probably is going to tell me they banged my mom, I should kill myself, and 360 no scope, YOLO. But anyways, thanks for watching, and if you like the video, please like and subscribe. I'm going to try to put more videos out like this, or maybe just updates of my progress with my album that's coming out hopefully in April. So thanks for watching, guys.